So I want you to imagine for a second that you are a smoker.
Okay.
You are standing at the counter of your local convenience store and, the fluorescent lights are buzzing overhead and you are looking down at a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
But depending on where you are in the world, this isn't just a sleek branded cardboard box with a tiny little warning tucked away on the side.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
In a lot of countries, the packaging has been heavily regulated to feature some of the most, well, gruesome, visceral imagery imaginable.
Yeah, we are talking about high-resolution, full-color photographs of blackened, tumor-riddled lungs.
Images of gangrenous toes,
Yeah.
disintegrating, rotting teeth. Open throat tumors. I mean, the visual
Yeah.
assault is entirely intentional.
Right.
In Canada, in Brazil, the UK public health mandates require these images to be forensically true to life.
Hmm.
The governing bodies design these labels to be as horrifying and physiologically repulsive as legally possible.
And they take up like more than half the surface area of the pack?
Exactly. The logic is totally straightforward. You confront the consumer with the literal biological consequence of their habit at the exact moment of purchase.
Right, and if you approach that smoker outside the store and you ask them point blank, do these graphic warning labels make you want to smoke less? Almost all of them will say yes.
They will. They'll tell you the warnings work.
Yeah, they say they feel the guilt, they see the rotting teeth, they know the risks, and it absolutely discourages them. They might even say it ruins the experience. But here is the fundamental question driving our whole deep dive
A
today.
big mystery.
Right. What if we didn't just take their word for it? What if, instead of asking them to fill out a survey, we slid that exact same smoker into a $4 million functional magnetic resonance imaging machine?
An fMRI scanner.
Yeah, an FMR scanner. Showed them those exact same gruesome images of blackened lungs and measured what their brain was actually doing in real time.
Well, when a global research team finally did exactly that, the results didn't just contradict the surveys. They completely shatter the foundational assumptions of modern marketing.
It's wild.
Yeah, public health policy, our understanding of human decision-making, all of it just completely upended.
Wait, let's pause here for a second because I really want to understand the mechanics of this. Before we get to the massive reveal, what is the fMRI actually measuring?
Good question.
Because my understanding of a brain scanner is just, a giant, loud magnetic tube. How does it know what a person is thinking about a cigarette?
It's a great clarification to make, actually. An fMRI does not read your thoughts like a psychic.
Right.
It measures blood flow. The brain is basically a biological engine, and when a specific region of the brain is working hard, it requires more oxygen.
Makes sense.
So the fMRI uses a powerful magnetic field to detect these really minute changes in blood oxygenation. It's a process called bold imaging.
Bold, like BOLD.
Exactly. Blood oxygen level dependent imaging. So if your visual cortex is processing an image, blood rushes there, and the scanner lights up on the monitor.
Got it.
If the amygdala is processing fear, blood rushes there. It gives us this incredibly precise millisecond by millisecond map of which neurological neighborhoods are active.
Okay, so they put the smokers in the tube, they show them the gangrenous toes and the terrifying warning labels. Where does the blood rush?
Well, it did not rush to the areas of the brain associated with fear or disgust or rational deterrence.
It didn't.
Not at all. Those terrifying graphic warnings, which,
Yeah.
funded by billions of government dollars worldwide, did not suppress the desire to smoke, like at all.
Wow.
Instead, the scanner showed a massive influx of oxygenated blood to a region called the nucleus accumbens.
And the nucleus accumbens that's the craving center, right?
It is the brain's pleasure and reward center. It's this cluster of neurons that just lights up like a pinball machine when the body anticipates something highly rewarding.
Unbelievable.
It's the exact same neurological real estate that fires when you desire alcohol or sugar or sex or when you're pulling the lever on a slot machine.
So the warning labels completely backfired.
Completely.
The very images meant to save lives were secretly acting as this killer marketing tool. They were literally triggering the neurological urge to light up, even while the conscious mind of the smoker was swearing up and down that the labels made them want to quit.
Right. It is the ultimate paradox of human behavior. The conscious mind is essentially acting as a corporate PR spokesperson.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, it stands at the podium, projecting confidence, delivering this highly rational, socially acceptable explanation for our actions.
Yes, the labels are scary. I should quit.
Exactly. But the subconscious mind, that is the rogue CEO sitting in a dark boardroom, driven by hidden biological urges and secret impulses, actually making all the purchasing decisions.
The CEO saw the cigarette pack, ignored the rotting teeth, linked the shape of the box to a nicotine hit, fired up the nucleus accumbens, and just commanded the hand to reach for the wallet.
Precisely. And understanding the dynamic between those two entities, the PR spokesperson and the rogue CEO, is what we are diving into today.
Because this is not just about cigarettes, right, or public health.
Not at all.
This dynamic applies to literally everything you buy. We are looking at this monumental book called BuyOlogy, Truth and Lies About Why We Buy by Martin Lindstrom.
A fascinating read.
And Lindstrom is a globally renowned branding expert. He's someone who spends like 300 days a year living in hotels, flying from Tokyo to Sao Paulo, just analyzing consumer habits.
Yeah, he's constantly on the ground.
And he set out to solve a massive multi-billion-dollar mystery that has been plaguing the business world for decades.
And that mystery is the sheer staggering failure rate of new products.
It's really that high.
Oh, it's wild. If you look at the data, out of every 10 new products launched into the market today, 8 of them will completely fail within their first 3 months.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. And in highly saturated markets, like Japan, that number climbs to nearly 9.7 out of 10.
That's practically 100% failure rate.
Pretty much. We are talking about tens of thousands of new brands, backed by millions of dollars in research and development, introduced every single year, only to vanish without a trace.
You know, it reminds me of that legendary quote by John Wanamaker, one of the pioneers of the modern department store.
Oh, the advertising quote?
Yeah. He famously said, "Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half."
It's so true.
Companies have been trying to figure out what consumers want for over a century. They use focus groups. They use massive online surveys. They have people standing in shopping malls with clipboards asking you to rate a new flavor of potato chip on a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
Why do these traditional methods fail so spectacularly?
Well, they fail because traditional market research relies entirely on interviewing the PR spokesperson.
Going back to the analogy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you put a consumer in a sterile conference room, offered them $50, and asked them why they bought a specific brand of shampoo, you are engaging their rational, conscious brain.
And that brain wants to sound smart.
It wants to provide a logical, socially desirable answer. The consumer will say, oh, I bought it because of the volumizing ingredients, or I bought it because it was on sale.
Right.
But the data Lindstrom presents suggests that up to 85% of the time, our brains are operating on autopilot.
85%.
Yeah. We don't actually know what we want. We do not know why we buy what we buy. We just invent a story after the fact to make ourselves feel rational.
So if you cannot trust what people say, I guess the only alternative is to look at what their biology actually does.
Precisely.
And that realization is what prompted Lindstrom to launch the largest neuromarketing study in human history.
It was massive.
3 years, $7 million, privately funded by 8 multinational corporations. They scanned the brains of over 2,000 volunteers globally. I mean, this wasn't just a couple of grad students in a basement lab.
No, the sheer scale of the methodology is what gives this research its weight. Prior to this, a quote-unquote major neuromarketing study might have involved scanning maybe a dozen people.
Right, totally tiny sample sizes.
But Lindstrom's team, which was led by heavyweights in the field like Dr. Gemma Calvert at the University of Warwick and Professor Richard Silverstein in Australia, they captured millions of individual data points.
Wow.
They exposed these thousands of volunteers to brands, logos, television commercials, product placements, meticulously recording the electrical and hemodynamic responses of their brains.
Okay, so we mentioned the fMRI machine earlier, the giant magnetic tube tracking blood flow. But they also used another technology heavily in this study called SST.
Yes, SST is crucial here.
What exactly is SST, and why did they need it if they already had the $4 million fMRI?
So SST stands for steady state topography.
Okay.
Think of it this way. If the fMRI is like taking a deep, high-resolution satellite photo of a city's traffic grid,
Right.
SST is like standing on the street corner with a radar gun.
Oh, I like that.
The fMRI is incredibly precise about where activity is happening deep in the brain, but it is slow. It takes a few seconds to measure the blood flow.
And a few seconds is an eternity in an ad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
SST uses a highly advanced electrode cap. It looks a bit like a futuristic, tight-fitting bathing cap covered in sensors. and it measures the brain's electrical activity millisecond by millisecond.
Oh, it tracks the literal speed of thought.
Exactly. SST is essential when you are showing someone a 30-second television commercial.
Because you need to know exactly what caused the reaction.
Right. If you want to know exactly which frame of the video, which specific word, or even which micro-expression on an actor's face triggered a spike in emotional engagement, you need the millisecond resolution of SST.
That makes total sense.
So by combining the deep spatial map of the fMRI with the rapid temporal map of the SST, Lindstrom's team created this really unprecedented window into the consumer subconscious.
And the central thesis that emerged from this mountain of data is what Lindstrom terms are BuyOlogy.
BuyOlogy.
And the core argument is incredibly humbling, honestly. Human beings are fundamentally irrational consumers.
We really are.
We love to believe we are highly analytical. You probably think you weigh the pros and cons, you check the Amazon reviews, you compare the price per ounce, and you make a logical choice based on utility.
But Lindstrom argues that the vast majority of our purchasing decisions are driven by deeply embedded subconscious forces. Emotions, fears, childhood memories, evolutionary hardwiring.
And that's where neuromarketing comes in.
Exactly. Neuromarketing is the synthesis of neuroscience and marketing strategy. It allows researchers to completely bypass the cognitive filter of the consumer.
So they don't even have to ask you if you like it.
They don't. It does not matter if a focus group participant claims they hate a commercial. If the SST shows a massive spike in emotional resonance and memory encoding, well, the brain is telling the truth and the mouth is lying.
The numbers don't lie.
Right. We measure the oxygenated blood, the electrical spikes, the dopamine release. It strips away all the pretense.
Now, I can already hear the alarm bells going off for anyone listening to this.
Oh, for sure.
The moment you combine neuroscience with marketing, it sounds incredibly dystopian. It sounds like a Philip K. Dick novel where corporations are installing mind control chips.
Yeah, the ethics are a huge question.
But Lindstrom makes a very clear point about why he is sharing this information, and I think it is vital we establish that context before we get into the specific traps our brains fall into.
Lindstrom's explicit goal is not to hand a magic, manipulative buy button to nefarious corporations.
Right.
He frames neuromarketing as a neutral tool. You can use a scalpel to heal, or you can use it to harm.
That's a good way to look at it.
From a corporate perspective, understanding our biology means companies can stop wasting billions of dollars mass-producing unwanted, wasteful products, and instead design offerings that genuinely align with human needs.
Less waste is definitely good. But the real power of this deep dive is directed at the consumer.
Absolutely.
It is for you, the person listening right now. Every day, you navigate a hyper-stimulated environment engineered by thousands of unseen marketers trying to bypass your rational defenses.
It's a minefield out there.
It really is. And the more you understand the exact mechanisms of how your brain is being triggered, the better equipped you are to defend yourself. You can recognize when a retail environment or a digital ad is trying to hijack your biology, and you can consciously intervene.
Because awareness is the antidote to manipulation. If you know where the traps are set, you can step around them.
Exactly. And the very first trap we need to dismantle is the illusion that logic plays the leading role when we choose between competing products.
Oh, this is a classic.
To truly understand this, we have to look at the ultimate historical tug-of-war between logic and emotion. We have to examine the Pepsi challenge.
The perfect case study.
For anyone who grew up in the late 20th century, the Pepsi challenge is a cultural touchstone. It is 1975, the absolute peak of the Cola Wars.
The stakes were so high.
Pepsi is trying to dethrone Coca-Cola, so they launched this brilliant grassroots marketing campaign. They set up tables in shopping malls and supermarkets all over the world.
They just pull everyday people aside.
Right. And give them 2 unmarked, unbranded cups of soda. One is Coke, one is Pepsi. The consumer takes a blind sip of each, points to the one they like better, and then the representative lifts a little partition to reveal the winner.
And the results of that blind test were definitive. A significant majority of consumers, like more than half, chose the taste of Pepsi over Coca-Cola.
It was a massive PR triumph for Pepsi. They ran television commercials showing loyal Coke drinkers shockingly choosing Pepsi. It seems like empirical, undeniable proof that Pepsi was the superior product.
But there was a massive glaring contradiction in the real world.
Right.
Despite this overwhelming evidence that people preferred the taste of Pepsi, Coca-Cola continued to absolutely dominate the market in actual sales.
It's so weird. People would take the blind sip test, declare Pepsi the winner, walk into the grocery store the very next day and buy a 6-pack of Coke.
From a purely logical economic standpoint, it made zero sense. If product A tastes better than product B and they cost the same, product A should win.
But it didn't.
It didn't. And the business world was completely baffled by this discrepancy for nearly 3 decades.
Enter the fMRI.
Exactly. It wasn't until 2003 that a neuroscientist named Dr. Reed Montague, working at the Baylor College of Medicine, decided to recreate the Pepsi challenge.
But this time, he moved it from the shopping mall into the fMRI scanner.
Right. He took 67 volunteers, placed them in the magnetic tube, and administered the sodas through a specialized tube system so they could sip while their brains were being mapped.
In the first stage of the experiment, Dr. Montague ran it exactly like the 1975 version. It was a completely blind test. The subjects had no idea which soda was which.
And the brain scans completely validated the mall findings.
They did.
Yeah, when subjects drank the Pepsi blindly, a very specific, deeply buried region of the brain called the ventral putamen lit up.
The ventral putamen, what is that doing?
It's a core component of the brain's reward system. It is heavily involved in processing sensory pleasure, particularly related to taste.
Okay, so it detects the sugar.
Exactly. Pepsi is formulated to be slightly sweeter than Coke, and it has a tangier, more citrus-forward flavor profile. In a tiny 1-ounce sip, the human tongue biologically prefers that intense burst of sweetness.
So the sensory data travels from the taste buds, up the cranial nerves, straight to the ventral putamen, and the brain essentially signals, this is a high-calorie, sugary reward. This tastes excellent.
Exactly. Logic dictates that the body wants the sweeter liquid.
But then Dr. Montague runs the second stage of the experiment. He keeps the subjects in the scanner, but this time he eliminates the blindfold aspect.
This is where it gets crazy.
Before injecting the soda into their mouths, he flashes the logo on a screen inside the tube. He tells them, you are about to drink Coca-Cola, or you are about to drink Pepsi.
And the shift in behavior was instantaneous. The moment the subjects knew what they were drinking, 75% of them suddenly claimed they preferred the taste of Coca-Cola.
Wait, I really need to drill down to this. Are you saying the actual physical experience of flavor changed just because they saw a red and white circle?
The fMRI data suggests exactly that. It revealed a literal neurological battle taking place inside the subjects' heads.
A battle.
Yeah. When the subjects were told they were drinking Coke, the ventral putamen, the taste reward center, was still registering the sugar. But suddenly, a completely different, much larger area of the brain roared to life.
Which area?
The medial prefrontal cortex.
Okay, what does the medial prefrontal cortex do?
It is a sophisticated region located in the frontal lobe, heavily associated with higher cognitive functions, emotional processing, and crucially, the retrieval of memories.
Ah, memories.
Right, when the subject saw the Coca-Cola logo, the medial prefrontal cortex was instantly flooded with every association they'd ever formed with that brand.
We are talking about decades of multi-billion-dollar marketing.
Exactly. Polar bears in the snow.
Santa Claus holding a glass bottle.
The iconic contour shape of the glass. The color red. Childhood memories of drinking a Coke at a summer baseball game.
It is an absolute avalanche of cultural nostalgia.
An avalanche that is so neurologically powerful, it creates a cognitive override.
It overrides the physical taste.
Yes. The medial prefrontal cortex basically shouts down the ventral putamen. The brain engages in a split-second tug-of-war between the objective sensory input of the tongue and the subjective emotional memory of the brand.
And the emotion wins.
The emotion wins. The emotional resonance of Coca-Cola literally overrides the biological preference for the taste of Pepsi. The brain synthesizes the memory and the liquid and concludes, because this is Coke, it tastes better.
That is deeply profound. It proves that emotions encode tangible, literal value in the human brain.
They absolutely do.
If a brand can successfully embed itself into our emotional memory architecture, it will defeat a logically superior product every single time.
Without fail.
So let's bring this directly to you, the listener. Think about your own morning routine. Think about the specific brand of coffee you buy or the specific operating system on your phone. Are you paying a premium because you have conducted an objective, rational analysis of its superior utility?
Probably not.
Or has your medial prefrontal cortex been hijacked by a comforting emotional narrative? Are you buying the taste or are you buying the red can?
Is the million-dollar question for every consumer. And because that emotional connection is the ultimate trump card, companies spend astronomical sums of money trying to forcefully attach their logos to emotional experiences.
Which seamlessly leads us into the concept of product placement and why the traditional method of doing it is completely broken.
Right, because everyone thinks they know how product placement works.
We see traditional product placement everywhere. Lindstrom refers to it as wallpaper advertising. It is the assumption that if a brand just pays to have their logo hovering in the background of a movie or a television show, our subconscious will absorb it.
Like James Bond aggressively shifting gears in an Aston Martin.
Or a reality TV star holding a prominently labeled bag of Doritos. Brands assume that mere exposure equals eventual sales.
But the fundamental flaw in that logic is a misunderstanding of how the human brain filters information.
Because we live in an era of unprecedented cognitive overload.
We really do. The modern consumer is bombarded by thousands of commercial messages every single day. If the brain actually processed and retained every single logo it saw, it would short circuit.
So what does the brain do?
To survive, the brain employs a mechanism called selective attention, or inattentional blindness. If a piece of visual information is not directly relevant to the narrative or the task at hand, the brain instantly deletes it from working memory.
It never even encodes.
Never even encodes. It's just visual static.
To prove how useless wallpaper advertising really is, Lindstrom's team aimed their research at the biggest television juggernaut of the 2000s, American Idol.
Oh, this is a massive study.
At the time, American Idol wasn't just a TV show. It was a cultural monolith drawing tens of millions of viewers. And it had three massive primary sponsors.
Coca-Cola, Singular Wireless, and the Ford Motor Company.
And each of these corporations was paying roughly $26 million a year for the privilege of being associated with the show.
$26 million, let that sink in.
So Lindstrom utilized the SST technology for this experiment, the electrode caps. He gathered 400 subjects, fitted them with the caps to measure real-time electrical engagement, and had them watch a standard episode of the show.
And the methodology here was incredibly precise. Before the subjects watched the episode, the researchers established a baseline.
Okay, how?
They tested the viewer's memory and brand awareness for dozens of different companies, including Coke, Singular, and Ford, to see what they naturally recalled before seeing any ads.
Smart. Now, let's look at how the sponsors actually utilized their $26 million. Ford took a highly traditional wallpaper approach.
Very traditional.
They ran high-budget, 30-second commercials during the ad breaks. Occasionally, they would film a separate standalone promotional clip where the Idol contestants were shown driving a Ford vehicle.
But it was entirely disconnected from the actual tension and drama of the singing competition.
Exactly. Coca-Cola, on the other hand, did something revolutionary. They did not just sponsor the show, they integrated their brand directly into the narrative DNA of the program.
The integration was masterful. If you recall the set design, the three judges sat behind a sleek desk.
Simon, Paula, and Randy.
Right. And right in front of them, perfectly positioned in the camera frame, were three massive, condensation-covered red Coca-Cola cups.
You literally couldn't look at the judges without seeing the cups.
Exactly. And when the camera cut to the green room, where the contestants waited in agonizing suspense before performing, the walls were painted the exact proprietary shade of Coca-Cola red.
Subtle but powerful.
The couches they sat on were subtly curved to mimic the classic Coke contour bottle. You could not consume the emotional highs and lows of the show without Coca-Cola being deeply woven into your visual field.
So the subjects watch the episode wearing the SST caps. The episode ends. The researchers immediately conduct a follow-up memory test.
And the results?
Well, the results for Coca-Cola were exactly what you would expect. Their brand recall skyrocketed.
Singular Wireless, which had a moderate mix of ads and minor show integration, stayed roughly flat.
But the results for Ford... This is the part of the deep dive that absolutely blew my mind.
It is arguably one of the most stunning findings in neuromarketing history.
Tell them.
After watching an hour of television that included multiple multi-million-dollar Ford commercials, the viewers actually remembered less about Ford than they did before the show started.
I have to push back on the biology of that. How is it neurologically possible to watch a commercial and somehow unremember the brand? Did the brain actively delete Ford?
It is a phenomenon known as memory interference, specifically a form of retroactive interference.
Okay, break that down for me.
Because Coca-Cola had integrated its brand so deeply into the emotional peaks of the show, the tears, the triumphs, the suspense of the judges' critiques, the viewers' brains devoted massive amounts of neural resources to encoding the Coke-associated imagery.
They were emotionally invested.
So invested that it monopolized their cognitive bandwidth. So when the broadcast cut to a traditional, disconnected Ford commercial, The brain essentially viewed it as irrelevant, static, and shut down memory encoding. The dominant narrative presence of Coca-Cola actively suppressed and cannibalized the memory of the Ford advertisements.
So Ford spent $26 million to literally drive their own brand out of the consumer's mind.
They paid to be forgotten.
That is a brutally expensive lesson in cognitive science, and the practical takeaway here is vital for anyone trying to navigate modern media.
Absolutely.
If a logo is just hanging on a wall in the background of a video game or sitting on a table in a movie, your brain naturally ignores it.
Right.
But the moment a brand becomes a crucial prop in a story you care about or is heavily utilized by a character you are emotionally invested in, it slips right past your rational firewall.
Integration is the key to bypassing the filter. But, pure integration is difficult and expensive to achieve.
Very true.
So if a brand cannot weave itself into a Hollywood script, how else can it implant a desire into your mind? How does a company make you crave a product you have never even touched?
To understand that mechanism, we have to look at a biological glitch discovered almost by accident in an Italian monkey lab.
This is one of my favorite stories in neuroscience.
It's so good. We are talking about macaques. Let's set the scene in Parma, Italy, in the early 1990s.
Right.
A team of neuroscientists led by Dr. Giacomo Rizzolatti are conducting research on the motor cortex of macaque monkeys. They have these extremely fine electrodes implanted into the monkey's brains to measure single neuron activity.
They want to see which specific brain cells fire when the monkey performs a very specific physical action, like reaching out and grabbing a peanut.
Right. And the methodology was focused entirely on motor execution. The monkey reaches, the neuron fires, the machine registers a spike.
Standard stuff.
But the breakthrough happened during a moment of downtime. The story goes that a graduate student walked into the laboratory. The monkey is sitting there, completely still, but still hooked up to the monitoring equipment.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. And the graduate student casually reaches out and grabs a peanut from the table. The monkey does not move a muscle. It merely watches the student grab the nut.
But the monitoring machine suddenly goes crazy.
It goes wild.
It registers the exact same intense neurological spike in the monkey's brain as if the monkey itself had physically reached out and grabbed the peanut.
The researchers were stunned. They thought the equipment was broken.
But repeated experiments confirmed the phenomenon. They had discovered what we now call mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons. Yes.
These are highly specialized cells in the brain that fire both when we perform an action and when we merely observe someone else performing that exact same action.
So from a neurological standpoint, there is remarkably little difference between doing something and watching someone else do it.
Exactly. The brain is basically running a virtual reality simulation.
This is the evolutionary root of empathy, right?
It is. It's the reason why, if you are watching a football game on television and you see a player take a horrific, bone-crunching tackle, you physically wince.
Or why, if a friend tells you a story and starts crying, you feel a lump in your own throat.
Or the most universal example, contagious yawning. You see someone yawn, your mirror neurons simulate the jaw stretching, and suddenly you are yawning yourself.
It's like our brains are hardwired to sync up with each other.
Evolutionarily, this allowed early hominins to learn complex tasks, like making tools, simply by watching others, without needing language. It allows us to intuitively grasp the intentions and emotions of our tribe.
But in the modern world, marketers have essentially weaponized this empathy engine.
They definitely have.
Let's look at how this applies to the wallet. Think back to the early 2000s when Apple first launched the iPod.
Oh, the white headphones.
Yes. Before the iPod, personal stereos and Walkmans all universally used thin black foam headphones. They blended in. Steve Jobs made the brilliant, deliberate decision to make the iPod headphone cords stark, bright white.
Because they would pop.
Suddenly, you're walking down the street in New York City, and you see someone leaning against a wall wearing those white headphones. They look relaxed, they look cool, they are lost in their own world.
And when you observe that person, your mirror neurons fire. You do not just see a piece of plastic. Your brain subconsciously simulates the internal state of that person.
It simulates the feeling of being cool, isolated, and technologically advanced.
And you suddenly desire that internal state.
Or consider the retail environment of clothing stores. You walk through the mall and pass by a Gap storefront. There is a mannequin in the window.
Right.
The mannequin isn't just standing straight up like a stiff board. It is posed dynamically. It is wearing a pair of perfectly faded jeans, a crisp white button-down shirt, maybe a red bandana.
It projects an aura of effortless weekend relaxation.
Even if you, the consumer, are stressed out and running late and you logically do not need another pair of jeans, your mirror neurons observe that posture.
They simulate the relaxation.
Your subconscious whispers, if I purchase that physical outfit, I will inhabit that emotional state. You are not buying denim, you are buying an attitude.
And certain brands take this to the absolute extreme. Abercrombie and Fitch in the late 90s and early 2000s was a masterclass in mirror neuron manipulation.
Oh man, the smell, the darkness.
They did not just use mannequins. They would install massive floor-to-ceiling blow-up posters of incredibly fit, half-naked models right at the entrance of the store.
It was intimidating.
Furthermore, they would hire actual, living, gorgeous young people whom they literally called models rather than cashiers to just stand outside the store entrance, laughing, flirting, and looking like the epicenter of high school popularity.
Imagine being a socially awkward, incredibly self-conscious 14-year-old walking past that entrance. Your brain doesn't stand a chance.
It doesn't. Your mirror neurons go into absolute overdrive. You observe this exclusive in-crowd. Your brain neurologically simulates what it would feel like to be that attractive, that desired, and that popular.
And this incredibly vivid simulation triggers the release of a massive neurochemical payload, dopamine.
Let's talk about dopamine because it is the ultimate engine of consumerism.
People often mistake dopamine for the chemical of pleasure, but it's really the chemical of anticipation, right?
Exactly. Dopamine is the motivation molecule. It is released in anticipation of a reward.
So when the 14-year-old's mirror neurons simulate the social status of the Abercrombie model, the brain calculates that acquiring the clothing will elevate their own status within the tribe.
And evolutionarily, higher social status means better access to resources and mates, which equals survival.
So the brain floods the system with dopamine to motivate the action of buying.
Right. The mirror neurons run the simulation. The dopamine provides the overwhelming urge to acquire, and the rational prefrontal cortex, which objectively knows a $50 distressed t-shirt is a terrible financial decision, is completely overridden by biological imperatives.
This perfectly explains a phenomenon that always baffled me. YouTube unboxing videos.
Oh, they are huge.
When a new tech gadget drops, like a new PlayStation or an iPhone, millions of people will watch a 20-minute video of a stranger simply cutting the tape and pulling the cardboard out of a box. Why is that entertaining?
Because watching someone else unpack a shiny new object forcefully fires your mirror neurons, giving you a vicarious simulated dose of that dopamine anticipation without you having to spend $1,000 yourself.
It is a brilliant way to momentarily satiate the biological appetite for acquisition.
It really is.
So, a practical defense mechanism for you, the listener. The next time you find yourself suddenly desperately craving a lifestyle product, whether it's a luxury car, a designer bag, or the latest tech gadget, force yourself to pause.
Interrogate the craving.
Ask yourself, do I objectively need the utility of this item? Or is my brain just running a mirror neuron simulation trying to capture the perceived social status of the person holding it?
Recognizing the dopamine rush for what it is can sometimes give your rational brain enough time to hit the brakes.
That is an excellent cognitive intervention, but marketers have another, even more subtle way of bypassing your logic.
Because mirror neurons require you to observe an action or a lifestyle.
Right. But what happens when you are alone in an overwhelming environment, forced to make split-second decisions? This brings us to the profound way the brain organizes sensory information, a concept known as somatic markers.
I find somatic markers incredibly fascinating.
Me too. To explain this, we have to go back to the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. Socrates compared human memory to a blank block of wax. Whenever you experience something new in the world, it presses into the wax and leaves an impression.
Fast forward to the modern era, and a brilliant neuroscientist named Antonio Damasio updated this philosophical concept with hard biology.
Yes, Damasio.
He explained that our brains survive chaos by creating neurological shortcuts, which he called somatic markers.
What exactly is a somatic marker?
A somatic marker is essentially a highly compressed bookmark in the brain. It is a chain link that permanently binds together a specific concept, an intense emotion, and a physical bodily sensation.
Okay, give me an example.
The most universally understood example is a child touching a hot stove.
Ouch.
Right. The child reaches out, touches the glowing red coil, and experiences excruciating pain and fear. The brain instantly creates a somatic marker. It permanently links the visual of a glowing red coil with the emotion of fear and the physical sensation of pain.
So from that moment on, for the rest of the person's life, they never have to stand in front of a stove and logically calculate the thermodynamics of the metal.
Exactly. The visual cue triggers the somatic shortcut, and the body instinctively recoils.
It is an evolutionary survival mechanism designed to save processing power.
And we use these exact same rapid-fire shortcuts every single time we walk down a supermarket aisle.
Because if we had to consciously, logically analyze the ingredients, price, and utility of every single product on the shelf, we would be paralyzed by cognitive overload.
Imagine standing in the bottled water aisle. Bottled water is arguably the most commodified product on Earth. It's literally just H2O.
Literally just water.
Yet there are dozens of competing brands. If you find your hand reaching for a bottle of distilled water, your conscious brain might tell you it was just a random impulse.
But your subconscious knows exactly why it reached for that specific bottle.
Iskilde is a Danish brand. The bottle is designed to be crystal clear, elegantly simple, with icy blue typography. Without you ever consciously articulating it, a somatic marker fires. Your brain instantly decodes the visual cue of icy blue text and Scandinavian origin and links it to deep-seated concepts of pristine, mountain glaciers, purity, and health.
You grab the bottle feeling like you made an instinctive choice, but you actually just responded to a highly engineered sensory bookmark.
It is the exact same reason we trust Michelin tires.
Oh, that's a great example. If you strip away the branding, tires are just heavy, identical, black circles of rubber.
But Michelin has spent over a century cultivating the Michelin man, that puffy, round, smiling white character.
When a consumer looks at a Michelin tire, the somatic marker activates. The subconscious mind does not see black rubber. It sees the puffy white character, which acts as a bookmark for softness, padding, safety, and protection for my family.
But here's where Lindstrom's fMRI research upends traditional marketing wisdom. For decades, the advertising industry has been obsessed with the visual sense.
Billboards, magazines, TV.
They poured billions into visual logos, massive neon signs, and glossy spreads. However, when Lindstrom mapped the brain's responses to sensory inputs, he discovered that vision is actually one of our weakest senses when it comes to triggering deep emotional engagement.
Vision is easily filtered, but smell and sound, they bypass the rational filter entirely.
Radically so. The olfactory nerve, which processes smell, has a direct anatomical pathway to the piriform cortex and the amygdala, the primitive areas of the brain responsible for deep emotional memory.
This is why a specific perfume can instantly transport you back to a high school romance, or the smell of pine can instantly evoke childhood Christmases.
Retailers know this. It is why supermarkets strategically locate the bakery right at the main entrance.
Yes, so don't even rely on actual baking. They pump artificial fresh-baked bread aerosols through the HVAC vents.
The moment you walk in, the scent of baking bread hits the amygdala. It bypasses your rational shopping list, triggers a biological hunger response, and activates a somatic marker of comfort, domesticity, and abundance.
And studies show this single sensory manipulation can significantly increase the total amount of money a consumer spends across the entire store.
That's powerful stuff.
But the power of sensory branding is a double-edged sword. If a company isn't careful, a sensory input can accidentally mutate into a negative somatic marker.
Oh, yeah.
And this brings us to one of the most revealing, almost tragicomic case studies in the entire book, the Nokia ringtone disaster.
At the time Lindstrom was conducting his global study, the default Nokia ringtone, a brief acoustic guitar melody adapted from a 19th century Spanish waltz, was arguably the most ubiquitous, recognizable sound on the planet.
It was playing on millions of devices worldwide. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Nokia executives assumed this was a massive branding asset. So Lindstrom's team put subjects in the fMRI and began by showing them silent visual images of Nokia mobile phones. The brain scans were positive. The subjects demonstrated affinity and positive engagement with the visual design of the product.
But then, while the subjects were still in the tube, the researchers played an audio clip of the Nokia ringtone.
And the neurological reaction was violent.
Violent.
The fMRI scans showed an immediate massive spike in the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, a region that heavily processes negative emotional information and aversion.
The sound of the ringtone did not just fail to engage the subjects, it actively suppressed and destroyed the positive feelings they had previously shown for the visual image of the phone.
It seems crazy, right? It's just a harmless little melody. Why did the brain hate it so much?
Because you have to consider the real-world context of how that sound was experienced. Over the years, the Nokia ringtone had become a deeply entrenched, highly negative somatic marker.
Right. Think about what that sound actually signified in the daily life of a consumer.
It was the sound that violently woke you up from a deep sleep.
It was the sound of your boss calling you on a Sunday afternoon to demand extra work.
It was the sound of the obnoxious guy sitting behind you in the movie theater who forgot to silence his device, ruining the film.
The melody had become neurologically fused with feelings of stress, intrusion, anxiety, and public annoyance.
So Nokia was actively pumping a stress-inducing sound into the environment millions of times a day, slowly poisoning their own brand equity.
And they had absolutely no idea until they looked at the blood flow in the brain.
The practical application for you, the consumer, is to become hyper-aware of the invisible sensory environment around you. The next time you walk into a boutique, a coffee shop, or a car dealership, take out your earbuds.
Stop and analyze the environment.
What tempo is the music playing at? What specific ambient scent is in the air? Notice the heavy, premium texture of the shopping bag they hand you.
None of this is accidental.
It is a meticulously engineered, multi-sensory environment designed specifically to bypass your rational filter and trigger a comforting somatic bookmark.
So we have established that our brains are easily hacked by mirror neurons driving social desire and somatic markers creating rapid sensory shortcuts. But there is another much deeper layer to our irrational behavior.
There's more.
Oh, there's a lot more. We live in a world that is incredibly fast-paced, unpredictable, and often deeply stressful. And the human brain hates chaos.
It desperately craves stability, predictability, and a sense of control.
Exactly. And when human beings crave control in the face of uncertainty, we naturally turn to rituals and superstitions.
Think about your own life. Do you have a specific immutable morning routine? Do you always put your left shoe on before your right? Do you knock on wood to prevent a jinx?
We perform these actions even though our logical brain knows perfectly well that knocking on a piece of timber has no physical effect on the universe.
We do it because the ritual provides psychological comfort. Marketers understand this deep-seated psychological need, and the most brilliant brands actively cultivate synthetic rituals to create unshakable lifelong loyalty.
A classic, universally recognized example is the Oreo cookie.
Twist, lick, dunk.
Exactly. You do not just open a package of Oreos and indiscriminately shove them into your mouth like potato chips. The brand has trained generations of consumers to engage in a specific multi-step ritual.
You take the cookie, you twist the two halves apart to expose the icing, you lick the center, and then you dunk the chocolate wafers into a glass of cold milk.
This sequence of actions is entirely unnecessary for caloric consumption, but it provides a comforting, predictable, interactive sequence. It elevates the consumption from a mere snack to an experience.
Another great example is the beer brand Corona. Why do people always wedge a slice of lime into the neck of a Corona bottle?
Well, there are myths that it started as a way to keep flies out of the bottle on Mexican beaches or to sanitize the rim.
But regardless of its origin, the lime has become a mandatory ritual. Or consider Magner's Irish cider. They completely disrupted the UK beverage market by heavily promoting the ritual of pouring their cider over a pint glass full of ice.
The ritual actually originated out of necessity. Pubs in Ireland supposedly lacked sufficient refrigeration space, so they served it over ice to chill it quickly.
But Magner's isolated that action, branded it, and made Magner's over ice a comforting, specific ritual that differentiated them from every other draft cider in the pub.
Rituals differentiate a brand in a sea of homogeneous products. More importantly, participating in a shared ritual creates a profound sense of tribal belonging.
If you observe the community of Apple product users, they share a very specific, carefully engineered ritual.
Oh, the unboxing.
When you buy a new iPhone, the unboxing is a meticulous process. There is the heavy, premium feel of the white cardboard. There is the exact engineered friction of the lid slowly sliding off the base.
There's the peeling of the protective plastic.
And finally, the specific iconic chime when the screen powers on for the first time. Participating in that ritual signals that you belong to the Apple tribe.
Which brings us to the most provocative, potentially controversial section of Lindstrom's entire research project. The connection between these highly ritualized brands and organized religion.
This part is wild.
Lindstrom began to notice that the most successful global brands, what he calls smashable brands, shared a striking number of psychological characteristics with organized religion.
Wait, what makes a brand smashable?
It means they have an identity so strong you could identify them even if the logo or the product were smashed to pieces. like the distinct contour shape of a Coke bottle or the unmistakable engine roar of a Harley-Davidson motorcycle.
Got it. But I have to stop you there because using words like tribe and ritual is one thing. But are you genuinely suggesting that standing in line for 3 days outside an Apple store to buy a new smartphone is neurologically identical to a devout believer attending church?
That is exactly the bold hypothesis Lindstrom's team decided to test in the fMRI scanner.
Unbelievable.
Dr. Gemma Calvert took a group of deeply religious subjects and a group of highly devoted brand consumers. She scanned their brains while showing them images of highly powerful, ritualistic brands, Apple, Harley-Davidson, Ferrari.
Okay.
Then she scanned their brains while showing them powerful religious imagery, rosary beads, images of the Pope, religious architecture. She also used weak, generic brands like BP oil as a baseline control to ensure the scanner was capturing genuine devotion and not just visual recognition.
And what did the data show?
The results were staggering. When the researchers compared the brain scans of the consumers looking at Apple and Harley-Davidson to the scans of the believers looking at religious icons, there was almost no discernible neurological difference.
No difference.
None. The exact same areas of the brain involved in memory, emotion, meaning-making, and deep reward lit up in the exact same distinct patterns.
The brain processes profound brand loyalty using the exact same neural circuitry it uses to process religious devotion.
Yes.
That is deeply unsettling. But when you step back and look at the actual marketing strategies of these massive brands, it makes perfect, chilling sense. They are systematically utilizing the very pillars that have sustained religious institutions for millennia.
Let's break those pillars down.
Yeah, let's do it. First, there is a profound sense of belonging. When you ride a Harley-Davidson, you are not just operating a vehicle, you are joining a brotherhood. You wear the leather, you attend the rallies, you flash the symbol.
Second, religion often unites its followers against a clear enemy sin, the devil, the non-believers. Brands do exactly the same thing.
Look at the classic Apple versus Microsoft ad campaigns from the 2000s. The cool, casual, creative guy representing the Mac versus the stuffy, rigid, uncool guy in the suit representing the PC.
It explicitly creates an us versus them tribalism. The third pillar is storytelling. Every major religion is built on powerful origin myths creation stories, trials in the desert, prophets.
Successful brands mythologize their origins too. The story of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak building the first Apple computer in a dusty California garage is told with the reverence of a modern Genesis myth.
Exactly. And the fourth pillar is mystery. Religions thrive on the unseen, the divine mysteries.
Tech companies replicate this with intense secrecy around new product launches, hidden features, and charismatic leaders delivering keynotes with the fervor of a sermon.
These brands are consciously co-opting the ancient evolutionary neural circuitry designed for devotion, faith, and community.
So let me see if I can pull all of these threads together, because Lindstrom is presenting an incredibly unified, cohesive worldview of human behavior here.
It all connects.
We like to think of ourselves as rational agents navigating a logical marketplace. But the truth is, we are biological, emotional, and sensory creatures first. Rational thinking comes a distant second, or maybe third.
The sequence builds perfectly upon itself. Traditional market research constantly fails because it relies on the PR spokesperson. It asks the logical, conscious brain to explain itself.
But the real driving decisions are happening in the dark boardroom.
Right. They are sparked by mirror neurons that crave the social status modeled by a mannequin. They are guided instantly by somatic markers, decoding the icy blue of a water bottle or the comforting smell of baked bread.
They are solidified by engaging in physical, comforting rituals like twisting an Oreo.
And ultimately, they are cemented by a tribal, almost religious devotion to a brand's narrative.
And crucially, all of this manipulation has to be integrated seamlessly into the environment, like the Coca-Cola cups on American Idol, so our rational, conscious defenses do not even notice it is happening until the purchase is already made.
The predictive power of this biological worldview is astounding. If corporations had access to this neuromarketing data decades ago, they could have saved billions of dollars in catastrophic failures.
Wait, what?
They would have known that the Ford Edsel was going to flop because it didn't trigger the right somatic markers. They would have known that the launch of New Coke in the 1980s was doomed.
Even though focus groups claimed they liked the sweeter taste of New Coke.
Yes, because an fMRI would have revealed that the emotional, almost religious connection to the original formula in the prefrontal cortex was far too powerful to be overwritten by a mere change in flavor.
Lindstrom actually discusses a modern example, a British television game show pilot called Quizmania. The producers ran traditional focus groups, and the participants claimed they absolutely hated it. They said it was chaotic and annoying.
The producers were ready to scrap it.
But when Lindstrom analyzed the brain scans of people watching the pilot, the electrical engagement was off the charts. The viewers were intensely biologically captivated by it.
So the network ignored the focus groups, trusted the brain scans, aired the show, and it became a massive hit. Neuromarketing can predict failure and success because it bypasses the social lies we tell and measures the only thing that cannot lie, our biology.
So we have to ask, who is the intended audience for this realization? Lindstrom wrote this book as a profound wake-up call. It is absolute mandatory reading for anyone in business marketers, creatives, entrepreneurs.
If you are tired of throwing money at campaigns and guessing why they fail, this book provides the actual biological science of consumer engagement. You have to stop appealing to logic and start understanding the architecture of the brain.
But I would argue that this deep dive is equally, if not more, vital for you, the everyday consumer, the person listening to this audio while commuting or doing the dishes.
Absolutely.
If you want to hack your own behavior, if you want to stop falling for these invisible sensory traps, if you want to regain sovereignty over your own decisions and your own wallet, you have to understand your personal biology.
We live in an ecosystem that is highly engineered, backed by billions of dollars, to separate you from your money.
Understanding the biological mechanisms they use is the only way to short-circuit the process.
And this brings us to a final, deeply provocative implication of this entire science. We have been discussing consumer goods, sodas, jeans, cell phones. But if our brains truly cannot distinguish between a religious icon and a corporate logo, and if we know that specific brain regions, like the amygdala, can be easily and predictably manipulated by sensory input, what happens when this technology leaves the commercial supermarket and enters the political voting booth?
Oh, wow. Let me follow that logic. We've talked about mirror neurons and tribal belonging. A political candidate is essentially just a brand, right? They have logos, they have slogans, they have a dedicated tribe. If a political campaign can map exactly what imagery triggers fear in the amygdala, they bypass the rational debate over policy completely.
And this isn't science fiction. It is already happening. Political campaigns have historically relied heavily on fear-based advertising because fear is the strongest evolutionary emotion.
Think of Lyndon Johnson's infamous Daisy ad in 1964, featuring a little girl picking petals juxtaposed with a nuclear mushroom cloud. It bypassed logic and hit the fear center directly.
Or consider the campaign strategies following the tragedy of 9/11. In 2004, a research firm called FKF Applied Research actually conducted a study where they placed voters inside an fMRI and showed them various political campaign advertisements.
What did they find?
They found that when the ads featured visual imagery of the September 11th attacks, it triggered a massive, measurable increase in activity within the amygdala, the brain's fear processing center.
Wow.
This was particularly pronounced in certain voter demographics. The study proved empirically that you can measure, quantify, and target political fear on a deep neurological level.
That is a terrifying thought to leave on. If politicians and their strategists fully adopt the principles of neuromarketing, what happens to the concept of a rational democracy?
It's a huge question.
Will future elections be decided not by who has the best policies, but entirely by who possesses the best data to hack our subconscious fears, stimulate our mirror neurons, and manipulate our tribal religious cravings?
It is something to deeply critically consider the next time you watch a fiery political debate.
Or even just a car commercial.
Because underneath it all, whether it is a ballot or a dollar bill, it is all driven by the exact same underlying biology.
We have covered a massive, sprawling amount of ground today. But I need to be completely honest with you. This 60-minute deep dive, as extensive and detailed as it has been, is genuinely only scratching the very surface of Lindstrom's 3-year, $7 million study.
There is a vast amount of fascinating data we did not even have time to touch on. The book explores incredible findings regarding the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of subliminal messaging in movies.
Oh yes, subliminal messaging.
It dives deeply into the age-old marketing adage that sex sells and reveals how the brain actually processes sexual imagery in advertising and whether it distracts from or enhances the brand memory.
Exactly. So if you felt your mind expanding today and you want to truly understand every single trigger, hidden trap, and biological quirk that dictates your behavior, there is a complete audio available.
Highly recommend it.
It covers several hours, going through every single chapter of biology in immense depth. It is packed with even more mind-blowing historical examples and incredibly actionable takeaways for your daily life. Check the link in the description below to go deeper.
We aren't pitching this to you. It is just the natural next step if you are genuinely interested in becoming the most informed, defensible consumer in the room.
It is entirely about arming yourself with knowledge against an invisible architecture.
Because at the end of the day, you want to make absolutely sure that when you make a decision, whether it's buying a coffee, choosing a smartphone, or casting a vote, it is actually you making that decision.
You want to ensure that the confident PR spokesperson at the podium and the hidden rogue CEO in the boardroom are finally communicating and finally on the exact same page.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.